And good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to another Xanadu Gallery online critique group session. Today is Wednesday, January 19th, 2022. It is great to be back here with you in another Wednesday morning session. And typically these sessions are about looking at artwork and having a conversation and getting everyone involved. These third Wednesday sessions, the Ask Me Anything session, are your opportunity to put forward some questions about what we've been talking about in other critique group sessions, about the art business in general, about galleries, and you get to drive the conversation. Only during the broadcast, you don't get to be quite as much of a part of it. I did receive so many great questions for this session that my goal today is to jump right into them, answer as many of them as I can. I want to give you good answers and some depth in the responses, but I also want to get some breadth and get to as many of your questions as I can. And so with that, we're diving right in, and we're going to start with our first few questions. I received 3 questions that kind of all fit together, and they are about portfolios. So Ron from Missouri says, you've mentioned the importance of having a well-structured portfolio to present to galleries. Please explain how to create this portfolio. GW, who is right here in Old Town Scottsdale, says, what format do you prefer to receive portfolios in? And Terry in New York says, I'd like to approach a local gallery about representing me. I always read you need to present a portfolio of work. Is it acceptable to refer them to my website, or do I have to build a print portfolio? So portfolios are on the mind, and it's a good question. All of these are good questions. I'm going to start with the last one. Can I just send them to my website? For a variety of reasons, my preference is not, when you're talking to galleries, is not to just give a link to a website. A structured portfolio allows you to present your work in a more formal way. It allows you to kind of have some influence on the order in which the images are reviewed. It allows you to narrow the focus of the work that you're showing. A website is all about showing the broad body of your work. And in a portfolio, we get a chance to kind of focus on your most recent, perhaps, or the highest quality, or a combination of both. And we get to focus on creating a consistent body of work. I recommend 20 to 25 images in this portfolio. Format-wise, many of you are already familiar with my thoughts on the format of the portfolio, but it's clear that we always have new members here, and it's time for me to share that again because I've received 3 questions about it. Now, it just so happens that late last summer, because I do frequently get questions about portfolio format, I created a 20-minute tutorial on how to create a digital portfolio. And I have become a big advocate of digital portfolios. They give you a lot of flexibility. They're easy to create and update. And when submitting to galleries, you have some options in terms of format of how you're going to present that. And so I have, you can see what the web page to get into this portfolio looks like. And I've created you a bit.ly link down at the bottom there. It is bit.ly, so bit.ly/Xanadu portfolio. And if you use that link, it'll take you to this 20-minute video of how to set up a portfolio. It gives you some samples of some portfolios so you can get a sense of what they might look like. And when you're finished creating your own portfolio, you can create a PDF copy of it, send it to me, and I will review it for you. Now, I'm not going to give you an in-depth analysis of your artwork, but I am going to give you some feedback in terms of the format of the portfolio and how your work looks in that portfolio. So that's a great way to just get a quick portfolio put together and get some feedback on it. Now, there are other ways to get more in-depth information. If you join our Art Business Academy, we have an entire session on creating a portfolio. And then I do give you a lot more depth. But this would be a good starting point if you just need a kickstart to your portfolio. Now, in terms of what you're going to be creating, it's going to be pretty simple. You're going to create a page with the artwork and all of the relevant information about that artwork. The idea is that you want to make it easy for a gallery owner to have a sense of not only what does my work look like, but what is the scale of the work, what medium am I working in, and what are the price points of my work. And by the way, that'll be retail price points that you're going to include in this portfolio. And then once you've created a digital portfolio, you then have some options in terms of how you're going to present it. A lot of times now I'll either get the digital portfolio via email, or if the artist is presenting it to me in the gallery, they might present it on their phone. You're not going to be able to see this very well because it's getting blown out, but not well at all. But you can present it on an iPad or even on a phone, or I've had artists who will print a copy and present it to me in a format, like this. And so you have a variety of options when you're creating digital. It gives you a lot of flexibility. And like I say, the other big advantage is that as artwork sells or you have new pieces available, you can very quickly update your imagery and get yourself up to speed. And so that's my recommendation. Take the little tutorial. And again, let me just pull us back to that link, and I'll also get us to the next question. It's bit.ly/Xanadu portfolio. Okay. Next question comes to us from Joe in Thousand Oaks, California. And Joe asks, please give your comments about quality art prints. I'm not sure what comments you want, Joe, other than to just say that, certainly there are a lot of options available now. It's become easy to create reproductions of your works, your clays and other prints. That's not a market that I am as familiar with, although I'm becoming more familiar. For our first 20 years in business, we primarily focused on selling originals. And my idea was that rather than offer some originals and some lower priced prints, we would just focus on a range of different originals from artists who are both well established and more expensive to newer artists and less expensive. Opening our gallery in Pine Top has changed that up a little bit. There is a little bit more of a market there. We've sold originals there and some high price originals, but also there's a little bit more of a market for work that might be going into a residence that is going to be a second home in the mountains during the summer, and maybe it's being rented out, doing an Airbnb or that kind of thing. And so maybe there's some interest in having some decor and some art there without having made quite the huge investment or having an original with the potential pitfalls that might come that way. And so, Joe, I guess I need a little bit more depth into the question of what you want to know, but I would just say that for many artists, it is worth exploring the option of being able to offer reproductions of your work. It is a different business than selling originals and some different dynamics involved. And my suggestion is that for most artists, it makes sense to first focus on building a core body of originals, establishing relationships with galleries to sell those originals, kind of get that market going and start generating sales there. And then once you feel like you're up to speed, you've kind of balanced you're generating enough sales to feel like you have a successful business going. Then at that point, consider exploring reproductions and expanding your business that way. Next question from Lori in Bellingham, Washington. What do you think about attempting to rebrand oneself? I do have some thoughts on that, Lori. And Lori says, I've sold a lot of work, but feel that the direction I'm going now should be somewhat separated from my past work in order to appeal or attempt to representation at different galleries. I don't necessarily want to disown my past work, but perhaps separate it from what I would want to present as more serious, newer body of work. With past social media posts, Etsy page, selling prints, can an artist essentially rebrand to appeal to higher end galleries? Or would it be best to just remove a lot of work, whimsical pieces, miniatures, et cetera, from one's website? So, boy, there is a lot to unpack there, probably more than we can get to in a 2 or 3 minute response here. But I would just give you some initial considerations. One, I would ask, why are you wanting to make this change? Is it because, and motivation is going to be important here, is it because you are feeling a kind of artistic calling toward a more serious body of work, if we can put it that way, to use your words? Is it your idea that you just feel like artistically you're ready to move in a different direction? And if that's the case, then what you're talking about, I think, does make some sense to kind of separate these bodies of work. I might even suggest, if you've got a thriving business of this other body of work that sounds like it is more whimsical and playful, and you're wanting to go in a more serious direction while still maintaining that other body of work, it might make sense not to rebrand, but to create a kind of parallel brand where maybe you are using a variation of your name. Maybe your current body of work is done by Lori Potter, and maybe your new body of work is LM Potter or something like that, or a maiden name, or something where you're just kind of taking it in a completely separate direction and creating its own portfolio, its own website, and its own marketing and business. Now, and by doing that, you then just eliminate the overlap and the potential concern. Now, I think the flip side of this that I just want to think about quickly is, are you thinking about making this change not because you're artistically pulled in that direction, but because you think maybe there's more potential business in that direction? That maybe serious artists sell more and make more of a name for themselves. And if that's the consideration, I would put the brakes on for a minute and just encourage you to rethink and say, well, I've been doing well with this other body of work. People like it. People are buying it. Would it make sense to maybe redouble my efforts in this body of work and expand my reach? And I know some very successful artists who are doing whimsical, fun work that might have a broader, kind of more mass appeal, or might reach a certain niche audience. And so I would really examine, and the reason I'm encouraging you to really think about this is because it is a big undertaking to move in a new direction. Basically you are going to be, even if you keep your name and branding and get rid of the old work and you're starting from square one, maybe square two, because you already have a lot of experience that's going to serve you well. But it's going to take some real time and effort to build this new business. And so I would just put a lot of consideration into my willingness to take that kind of leap, and see if there might not be other options. And Lori, if you want to discuss that further, this is a great format for a great forum for doing that. And maybe in a future session, we could look at your work and talk further. Okay, question from Lisa in Kalamazoo. My work is currently in a gallery that I've been with for over 14 years. I sell consistently and currently trying to make my work cohesive enough to approach another, more reputable gallery with higher prices and nationally known artists. I'm not ready to approach this gallery yet. Another opportunity just opened up with a new gallery that's within 5 miles of the Target gallery. Both are in a resort area along Lake Michigan. Is it better to wait until I'm ready to approach the better gallery, or just show at the new gallery? Will I ruin my chances of working with more reputable, long-standing place by doing so before I'm ready to be seen in that market? Good question, and certainly some considerations. This is, I kind of would think of this as an approach to business kind of question. What is my general strategy going to be in life? And in building my business. And I would suggest what I found has worked well for us is to take the bird in hand. The bird in hand always is better than two in the bush, to use a metaphor. And in this case, if you've got a gallery interested in your work and have the potential to show and start selling the work, I would jump on that. There is just no guarantee, no matter how much effort you put into building your body of work, creating a beautiful portfolio, the likelihood of this Target gallery both being interested in the work and being at a point where they're ready to take you on, just the realities for any artist going into a gallery is that the numbers are somewhat stacked against you. They have a limited amount of display space. They can only take on a certain number of artists at any given time. And it just takes a lot of stars aligning in order to build a new relationship with the gallery. And so with that in mind, if I've got an opportunity in this other gallery and they're ready to take my work now, I jump on that. And you just never know. You might find, we don't have a crystal ball to see what would have happened if I would have done something else, but you never know that this gallery might even do better for you than your target gallery. It can be very hard to judge that just from external factors. And so I would hesitate to hesitate. I would really encourage us to take opportunities when they come our direction. And this doesn't necessarily mean that we're precluding ourselves from future opportunities with the other gallery. I have taken on many artists who have shown in other galleries in my area prior to showing with me. And so obviously there are going to be a lot of other variables at play, and it's going to depend on how do you feel about the owner of this gallery that's offering representation. Do they seem to have good business practices? Once you're showing with them, are they actively promoting you and selling your work? A little hard to predict, but I'd much rather have that opportunity now than forego it. Wait until I'm ready to present to the other gallery, present to them, and have them say, you're not a fit for us. And now I go back to the first gallery and they say, oh, we would have loved to show you, but now we have other artists. And now I've lost both opportunities. I'd be very careful about that. Next question comes from Joyce, who is in North Carolina. She's a member of the Art Business Academy, and it's in the process of sending out emails to galleries. She mentions that she sent out to 15 galleries over the last 20 to 30 days. I've only gotten 2 replies. Now, you say only. I would consider that a fairly good response rate to your initial 15 submissions. One of the galleries mentioned that they only take on local artists, and the other didn't have clients for my style. But the question is, okay, what about the other 13 galleries that I've submitted to? How do I follow up with them? And my suggestion is that, yes, you definitely do want to follow up with additional emails. The goal when I'm submitting to galleries, my goal is to get a response. You might say, well, that's not a great goal. The better goal would be to get representation. But I don't have any control over that. All I can control are my efforts to put my portfolio forward, give them the opportunity to see the work and respond. And until I get some kind of response from a gallery, I'm not certain that that has occurred. And so my goal is to be back in touch with them and give them multiple opportunities. Some might use the word pest. I wouldn't use that word. I would use the word persist. Some of the same letters there, but I want to be persistent, and I want to let the gallery owner know, hey, you can throw my email away and not respond to it if you would like, but as you do that, it is likely that you're going to receive additional emails from me. And so ultimately, the equation for the gallery owner becomes, well, I guess I better take a look at this, and I'm going to respond one way or the other. And as an artist, I would want to hear no over not hearing anything. Because now I know, okay, they've let me know they're not interested, or they're not interested right now. And so I can then move on to other efforts. And so in these follow-up emails, my suggestion would be the first email can be a simple, just wanted to make sure you received my portfolio. And in fact, you could do 3 or 4 emails with exactly cut and paste copy of that same thing. Really, we do not need to be, Pulitzer Prize winning email writers for our follow-up emails. They can be very simple. The main idea is I've attached that digital portfolio that we talked about earlier, and I'm trying to get you to look at it and respond to it. And so really what I say in the email, I would keep it short. My subject line is going to be artist submission, and then the follow-up ones might be follow-up on artist submission. And don't agonize over any other detail about it. The idea is that they're getting that email, they're getting the portfolio, and I'm encouraging them to respond. And 4 or 5 or even 6 or 7 follow-ups would not be too many. You can kind of figure out your own rhythm here. And as you're submitting to a large number of galleries, and again, we talk about this in the Art Business Academy, how to build a list of galleries and submit to them, you're going to see that you can kind of get into a flow where you have your cut and paste file that you can use to create these. And then ultimately, it is a numbers game. I get this out to enough galleries and I follow up consistently enough eventually. And sometimes it happens quickly and sometimes it takes a little longer. Eventually, I'm going to start to get responses. And ultimately, I am going to get the response from a gallery that's interested in showing my work. Next question comes to us from Frank in Austin, Texas. We featured Frank here several months ago. And Frank asked, I'd be interested in getting your opinion on the investment grade or blue chip art markets and how it relates to your business model. Have you dabbled in this market? What are the bridges between the two? And is it mostly run by dealers as opposed to galleries? Is this a market that galleries in general strive to enter? Is it worth it? Any insights you have on this subject would be appreciated. Yeah, it's an interesting question. Certainly, I think about it. And you know, Frank, when he talks about the blue chip art market and investment art, what we're thinking of is a little bit, it is different than the market that I am in. The business I am in is the business of connecting potential art buyers and potential collectors with artwork that they can appreciate and enjoy. That is the real focus of what I'm selling. I want to sell someone an experience of visiting my gallery and encountering new art that excites and interests, and then helping them acquire that artwork, get it into their home, and be able to enjoy it day to day. Now, some of that can occur in the blue chip art market as well. But when we say blue chip or investment, what we're talking about is I'm interested in buying a Van Gogh or a Jackson Pollock or an artist who is universally known and appreciated, whose artwork has a value to it that would exceed what we might anticipate purely from an enjoyment standpoint. That there is an expectation that if I buy this artwork and hold it, not only will it retain its value, but I expect that it will increase significantly in value. And at some point in the future, I may be able to turn it around and sell it at a profit. Again, that could cross back over to my side of the business where, yes, I have some artists who are up and coming, and maybe at some point they will grow. But I am not selling that. And in fact, I will, if you ask me about the investment quality of the work that we're showing in the gallery, I'm going to say the investment, the return you're getting on this is that enjoyment that you get day to day in your home, appreciating that artwork. That is what I'm selling. And if you're looking to buy something with the hope that it's going to go up in value, could it happen? Maybe. It's a long shot. Let's just be realistic about it. And that should not be, in my gallery, your primary concern. Now, as a gallery owner, you can't help but see an article in the New York Times about record-setting, eye-popping prices paid for pieces of artwork. And you can't help but think as a business owner, boy, it's fun selling all the artwork I'm selling. Wouldn't it be even more fun to sell a $10 million Andy Warhol or something like that? But it is a different business, and the finances are very different. The dynamics are very different, and it's just not a business that I'm in. And frankly, it's not really the business that I aspire to. I am primarily interested in working with and having a relationship with the artists who are creating the artwork, and creating a relationship between the artist and the collector. And I love that dynamic. That's the business that I'm in. And so never say never. Could at some point there be an opportunity to get into that? Perhaps, but it's just not something that I'm actively pursuing. And, we always hear about the big sales and the profit that was made. I suspect we don't hear as much about the many collectors who have paid tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars and have not seen a huge return on their investment, because that story isn't quite as interesting. Rebecca asks, you mentioned the importance of being consistent in at least 4 of the 6 categories: subject matter, style, theme, medium, palette, and presentation. And we do talk about this with some frequency in our weekly sessions. Could you clarify the difference between subject matter and theme? Yes, and that is a question that comes up. What is the difference? And they are certainly closely related to one another, but I would think of it this way. Your subject matter is what you are physically depicting in your artwork. It is a mountain and a brook and some trees. It's a forest scene, or it's a figure at a cafe. There's my subject matter, right? It's what I am picking. It's what's in front of me, or could be abstract, and it's what I am conveying. Theme runs a little bit deeper than that. And for some of us, the theme is going to be very simple: serenity in nature. That's the underlying thematic element that I'm looking for as I go out and could pick to depict anything, right? I could go in any direction. I could go into the city, or I could go into the country. That underlying theme and my framework for thinking about what I want to depict, how I'm going to depict it, what subject matter I'm looking for. That is certainly a related element, but it's separate from the idea of subject matter. So it can be a little bit hard to put our finger sometimes on what the theme underlying our body of work is, but I would suggest that it's worth thinking about what is it that's motivating me to be interested in the particular subject matter, and that underlying theme can help tie it together and again create another element of consistency. Cheryl, another artist from Missouri, asks, in regard to fine art business income, is there a guideline expectation for amount or percentage of income from different sources, such as reproductions, original art, teaching, workshops, and other avenues of art income? What would be a realistic expectation for each source of income amount? This could be a national average overview. Yeah, boy, it would be nice if we could get some statistics on this. The art world is a small enough world that you don't see a lot of hard statistics. I might suggest, though, that even if we had those statistics, they might not be particularly useful to us. Telling us that the average artist earns 20% of their income from teaching, and 55% of their income from original fine art sales, and 10%. That would be interesting to know, but I would suggest that we might not be able to find a single artist in the entire country who we could label as average artist. That there's just so much variation among every artist that those numbers might not be very useful. In my experience, even as I look at the 35 artists or so that I'm showing in my Scottsdale gallery and talk to them about their business and their income, most of my artists, the majority of their income is coming through the sales of their fine art, their original fine art. But I do have some teachers who do, or some artists who do some teaching or workshops, and so that becomes. And so I think this becomes more of a question of, as you think about how you want to be spending your days, where you want to be devoting your time and effort, you get to kind of choose what direction you want to go in. And that choice is going to determine then where those percentages lie for you. If you love teaching, and you would enjoy spending regular time doing it, it's going to be a higher percentage of income for you than for some of the artists that I work with who just don't enjoy that prospect at all, and it's 0% of their income. Janet asks, let me get over here, and this is a question that we're kind of running into more, and I have friends who are not in the art business who are asking me questions in this direction, but let me break this apart a little bit. My art is photo-based digital collages. Cost creation is zero other than my time, but to print them on acrylic or aluminum costs hundreds. So for a work that sells for 1,000, a gallery would take 500, and I would end up with 300 after paying 200 to have it printed. That model doesn't work for me, exclamation point. Okay. Let me just stop you right at that point for a second, because we could talk a little bit about the finances and dynamics of this. And I might just put forward a couple of thoughts to you. The idea is, okay, as I run these numbers, 300, wait a minute, the gallery's making 500, I'm paying 200, I'm only profiting 300, and I might suggest it's probably even less than that when you consider your studio expenses, overhead with digital equipment that you're buying, and maybe interest expenses if you've had to borrow to get some of your equipment. And so your net might be closer to $200 or $175. You say, man, I'm losing in this scenario, right? The gallery gets 500, my printer gets 200, and I get 175 or 150. And that doesn't feel right. I'm doing the creative work here, right? But I might suggest we step back and think about some of those other scenarios. Okay, the printer is making 200, but how much is the printer paying for their equipment and their employees? They've got overhead. It's not $200 in profit that they're making, I assure you. The gallery has overhead. They're paying employees and rent and all those kinds of things. So they're not making $500 in profit either. So things start to balance out a little bit better, but forget all of that. I would go and say, okay, I'm making $175 when I sell through a gallery. That's not a lot. But let's think about my alternatives. If I sell directly to collectors, then I get to retain the full amount and I would get $800 of a sale. But how much work did I have to do to find the customer, market my work to them, go through the sales process, and then generate the sale? And it's my time now that is becoming a big factor. And if I can even find the clients who are interested. In essence, if I'm going to show it through a gallery, what I'm doing is I'm hiring them. They've built a clientele. They do marketing, and I'm hiring them to bring the customers to me instead of me throwing my hands up in the air and saying, how do I get to these customers? How can I get people who will be interested and qualified and make purchases of my artwork? And so then I might think also, well, if I show with galleries and I can show with multiple galleries and I can start generating a volume of sales, and I could have galleries selling 10 pieces or 20 pieces a month for me. Well, now, let's just say it's 10 pieces to keep the math easy. Well, now I'm generating $1,500 in profit. And I've increased my volume. What would it take for me on my own to sell 10 pieces? And I just think that we want to think about all of the variables. If I just look at the gallery commission and think of it, hey, that's not fair. Why are they making so much money? Yeah, I can see how that's not quite as appealing. But if I start to think about the broader dynamics and what I'm getting for that investment, then the dynamic starts to change. Now, the second part of the question, which I think is also interesting, and that is, so I'm going to sell my digital collages as non-fungible tokens on the blockchain. Cost to create is zero other than time. We can't discount that time. The digital marketplace takes approximately 15%, although the artist can secure a 10% commission on the resale of any of their pieces that are resold. It remains to be seen how it will play out. Yes, Janet, it does remain to be seen. And here is the challenge. I think I see definitely a lot of interest in NFTs and the blockchain and selling work that way. And for a digital artist, but even for an artist who's creating something physically that could be reproduced digitally, there is certainly some appeal there. And we're hearing about some eye-popping sums of money being paid for NFTs right now. And here, I think, is the potential problem. And here's why I'm not closing my physical store and jumping over onto the blockchain. And that is that what I'm seeing feels a lot like a bubble, where there's a lot of interest in the technology and the novelty of what's being offered here. And the potential upside of I can buy an NFT for X and then sell it for 10X. And there's no or very little transaction cost involved. That's really cool. And so there's been a lot of money that goes in. Well, the flip side of that is that when there's a lot of money that goes into something, you also have a little bit of a gold rush mentality where now every artist is going to pay attention to it. And you might have had 1,000 artists a year ago who were creating NFTs. and the billions of dollars that were going into NFTs were being split among 1,000 or 2,000 artists, and boy, that was eye-popping. But all of a sudden this year you have 1 million artists who have decided they're going to create NFTs. And you've had a bunch of investors who found out that they put their money in there, and now where they can't resell it, or they're not enjoying owning a digital representation of an artwork. And so you get this dynamic where I suspect it's not going to sustain at the same levels that it has been. Certainly there have been some artists who got in early and had a vision and have done very well creating NFTs, but I just wonder how sustainable that is for the broader art market. And what I guess I would ultimately say is I suspect there will be some artists who do very well and can build a sustainable business around it. I suspect it will be few. There will be some intermediaries who help congregate potential collectors and buyers and investors and make some commission, and they'll build successful businesses around that. And there will be some of us who just keep doing what we're doing, which is, we found our business. And again, I'm not selling investment. I am not selling NFTs. I'm selling physical artwork that can go into the home. So like many aspects of the art business, I'm not sure that there is a right answer or a wrong answer so much as there is a decision to be made. Do I want to pursue NFTs? And if the answer is, I think they're cool and I think it could be fun and it's a unique opportunity for me to get my work out there, then I would go for it. And I would be spending all of my time understanding the dynamics of the business, looking at how people are successfully marketing and working to replicate that. But if we think that there is an easy way to make money in the art business, that this goes for any approach to the art business, I would just suggest it's probably not going to be as easy or as forthcoming as we might hope would be. Okay, I spent too much time on that, but I hope that's a helpful conversation to have. And I want to try and get one more question in. This is a question from Annie in California. I'm thinking about the commitment of being a true artist and the responsibility of that to your clients. My uncle passed away, and I had quite a bit of art that I needed to rehome. While I admire and appreciate his support of artists, I'm thinking about $4,000 each he spent on a number of paintings that I literally gave away. The artists have pretty much become unavailable online, etc., so the value of their work remains solely with the beholder. I feel there's another element that we don't talk about regarding this commitment and responsibility. And so this kind of fits into our theme for today, is just kind of thinking about the value of art. Where does it come from? What is it? What is the business that we're working in? And, Annie, I think you make some very interesting and valid points. And I think if we think about kind of the core of your statement, okay, my uncle paid $4,000 for this piece of artwork. He's passed on, and now I'm working to rehome, might be one word, dispose of might be another way to put it, and I've got to figure out how to move this artwork on. And if you think about the $4,000 that was paid for that piece of artwork, and now I can't even sell it for $100, or just realistically, that can feel like a shocking loss of value over time. And if we think about the realities if you think about how many paintings or how many sculptures are being created in the world today on January 19th, 2022, how many new works of art are going to come into existence and be completed in this one day? And then you think about the dynamics of where all that art is going to go, what's going to happen to it. You just realize it's a bit of an overwhelming prospect. And you might feel like, well, goodness, are we cheating people by selling it for $4,000 and then ultimately they can't resell it? And what I would say is that I just wouldn't think of it in that way. Again, what I would think of is if we amortized those $4,000 over the years of enjoyment that your uncle got out of that work, and if we consider the pleasure that it brought him to support an artist, and to help them live their dream and fulfill their calling in life, I would suspect that that's where the real value is. And that ultimately the resale value of artwork in the secondary market or the deceased artist market, it's just not a major consideration that I spend a lot of time thinking about. Ultimately, my clients may want to resell some of their artwork. And when that becomes the case, they've got to try and find a venue. We don't do resale, so we can't help them in that regard. But there are some galleries that focus on, even here in Scottsdale, that just focus on resale. But the conversation that the owners of that gallery or those galleries have with the buyers is, look, what you paid for this artwork has nothing to do with the resale value of the artwork. Maybe we'll get lucky and there'll be a buyer out there who just has to have it. Or maybe this artist, their name has grown and there is some increase in value. But all of that, all the initial amount that you paid is irrelevant. Ultimately, the value of any artwork is what someone is willing to pay for it. And we can generate some effort. And as a gallery owner, my entire business is structured around helping create that value. And we do that through marketing and also a little bit of a sense of scarcity and originality and all of those things. But ultimately, we got to have buyers. And so I just would think of those as two almost completely divorced elements of the value of a piece of artwork. The purchase price that someone makes initially really ultimately has nothing to do with and should not be influenced by what the ultimate value of that work might be. All right, I've rambled a bit. I've enjoyed sharing some thoughts and taking your questions. I appreciate so much the topics that we get to cover in these sessions and the perspective that we get by hearing your questions. And I know that sometimes, you're going to ask a question that I wouldn't even have thought of in that way, or that another artist here might not have contemplated. And I think that it is that soup that we're all swimming in, and getting little pieces of it from each of us that really enriches, and it's a great opportunity. So I enjoy these sessions. That was a long way of saying I love these third Wednesday Ask Me Anything sessions, and I appreciate your questions. I did not get to more than half of the questions that were submitted. Be patient with me. If I didn't get to your question, resubmit it next month. And eventually we will get to your question, or join us in the Art Business Academy, where we have these Ask Me Anything sessions every Friday. But thank you so much for joining us. We will look forward to being back here next Wednesday and get to look at one of our members' work. And we'll see you then. Have a great week, everyone.